So anyways, I'm glad to be here. It's nice to see all of you. And as the big bold letters say, I'm going to talk about API-centric development and non-API company. My name is Konstantin Yakushev. I work in Badoo for 2.5 years now, and I actually speak at every single platform summit. So that's the third platform summit. And every time I come here, I'm trying to look at something that is a little bit different from maybe the mainstream line of topics, or at least something that seems to be away from the mainstream, because it kind of end up being still as mainstream as all of you, right? So, in this case, what I really wanted to look at is how we, as an absolutely non-API company, ended up having a lot of API designers, really, and architects, and why was this a good solution, and how maybe you can reuse something that we're doing, and well, how it is a bureaucratic thing, and why, even though it's a bureaucratic thing, it's good. And also on other things, I don't know, I'll talk about how we combine careless agile with excruciating bureaucracy. Now, many Badoo developers takes to change a light bulb. So, and how we avoid thinking, obviously. So Badoo, anyway, I don't know, maybe some of you heard about it, some of you didn't. It varies depending on what country you're from, but it's a dating app. It's the largest one in the world, actually. This slide is outdated. I think it's 360 million of users now. But anyway, we're a huge company. And also a lot of our services we share with some of our partners that are also dating apps. Well, we are an old company as well. We started like 11 years ago, I think. And we ended up as a website, PHP, you know, and the usual soup for the 11 years ago, where PHP generates HTML and some JavaScript that does horrible things. And we ended up doing something that I called API-Centric Development. I'm not the first person to combine words in that order. I'm not sure whether I mean the same thing that the other people mean. But what I mean by API-centered development is that we have a dedicated API designer team, even though the API is obviously all internal, only for our apps and our partners. And we are doing API before developing the actual thing. And we're writing the docs before developing the actual thing. And we concentrate the historical knowledge in these docs. And I'll cover more later. So the process is like this, very waterfallish. The product managers say, okay, we want to build this thing. Us, the bright orange rectangle, we write the docs and we specify the actual API endpoints and whatnot, the fields, etc. And then it goes to server developers, and when the server developers are finished, the client developers do their things. And well, theoretically, after API design, you can do server and client in parallel, but in practice, it turned out not to be the case. I don't know if somebody actually succeeded in doing this one. Talk to me, because we tried several times and failed spectacularly. So, anyways, but that's not all that's happening, of course. There's a lot of review going on. Like, we have a team of 4 people, and when we are doing the new API thing, at least 2 people have to review. So at least 3 or 4 people have seen every single change that we made. And before, when we were a 3-person team only recently, everybody has seen everything that's been doing. And if it impacts the developers seriously, they review it as well. So that's a lot of back and forth going on, you know. So it really seems very, very bureaucratic. And it seems like, okay, we're doing a lot of stuff and it's really slow, right? We write, the product managers write their documents. We write our documents. There's a lot of review going on and on and on. So like, this should be extremely slow, right? Actually, it's not always that. And here's why. This is not the only process that's taking place. And this is basically how we win. Like there could be several other processes. Like products can go straight to devs if that's not an API change, or for example, server guys can actually push a patch straight to production straight away, and we have enough monitoring and enough courage to do that. And well, obviously we can roll back as quickly as we do that. So that's kind of how we balance it all out. So we have both this huge horrible thing, and it's kind of huge and horrible, but after doing it for several years, what we've discovered is the fact that we have all this documentation, and by now our team has not only covered everything new that's happened since the inception of the team, but we've also written documentation backwards for every single feature that there is. And the fact that it takes, I don't know, several weeks actually helps very much this thing. Because if somebody wants to change something quickly, they have to be heavily in the context. They have to understand exactly how it is supposed to work, have to understand exactly what they're seeing, why is it wrong. And instead of going around and asking around, they can actually take a look at the docs and see, oh, okay, yeah, it says to do that, it doesn't do this. And well, obviously it's more a monitoring thing, but we help a lot here. And the Siemens bureaucracy actually helps agility in this case. And also we do that as well, like if somebody comes to us. So, well, I don't know, I just like bold circles, but basically we kind of have the attention to detail from in one process and swiftness of change in another, and we're trying to find the sweet spot. Like, of course, obviously you can say it's the worst of both worlds, but that's not what we're seeing now. So, and in terms of, so I promised to tell you how many Badoo developers it takes to change the light bulb. So if it's a huge light bulb, like a feature-defining light bulb, then we're doing this thing. And it's 24 people, right? The product manager, API designers, 2 reviewers, server developers on 2 teams, 2 reviewers, 2 QAs, 2 web teams, Android, iOS, 2 QAs, reviewers. You know the drill. So 24 people can actually change enormous light bulbs in our company. Like this year, we've pulled up a huge redesign project where we almost simultaneously launched a full redesign of the system using this flow. And once again, the documentation helps tremendously because you change a lot of design, but the functionality underneath doesn't change. And you can always go back and take a look at how exactly it works. And if you want to change like a small light bulb or I don't know, a diode or something, then you just need a server developer and somebody who's going to review his code. So to put this into perspective, we have around 4 API, not around, we have exactly 4, like 3 brightest engineers and me, an API design team, and around 20 iOS developers and something like that in all other teams. So, well, basically there are 4 people for around 100 of people. And we consult, not only we write the documentation, like half a day of every API designer in our company is spent talking to people. It's either actually finding out what's supposed to happen, or very often it's somebody from this part coming to us and telling, okay, how the hell is this supposed to work? Like in the documentation it's like this, in practices like that, and then the server developer says it's like this. And this is the important part. Developers don't really, okay, I'm going to say, developers don't really like to think. The idea about developers is they strive to solve problems when those problems are of technical kind. Like, okay, how do I make this fast? How do I make this component behave in this manner? Or I don't know, how do I end the day maybe and then go home? But what is really rare among developers is people who can talk to management in a productive fashion, who can find compromises. So this is something that we do as well. Try to find those compromises for them, and in the beginning, when they start to develop a feature, what basically happens is they have everything ready, and this is like for many developers this is a blessing, because many people really like the approach of please write me the spec and I'm gonna code the code into it. And we are actually in quite often we are actually able to provide that, which is surprisingly rare from my experience. So how do we do that as a team? Technically, we have protocol buffers, which is something we had when we started doing mobile development, which is a binary protocol, but it has a it has format for defining the messages, and we've built our own framework, which is basically similar to Swagger in terms of functionality. You define what you get, what requests can you do, what responses do you get. We auto-generate the code. Obviously, we push out all the relevant documentation to the developer's code in their classes, and we've got a Sphinx doc site based on restructured text. So this is how a typical documentation looks like. It's got a lot of links, basically to when it was made, who made it, when it was made, to API ticket, which is a Jira ticket, and it allows linking to every single one of this whole flow. You can do from this document. You can go in seconds to iOS ticket, to Android ticket, to anything. It's all linked together. Okay, I'm waving my phone and it clicks. Sorry. Anyways, the indicate and support part. This is basically a promo for my previous talk last year, which was about API versioning. Really, it's better than this one, trust me. Take a look at it. Which is basically how do you tell the server that I know about this new stuff that's described in this document. The next one is, and then the obvious thing, right? The requests and the responses. And what I want to really draw your attention to is, take a look at, there's basically no data there. There's like a lot of ellipses. And the reason for this is not for computer consumption at all. What is very important about this documentation, it's absolutely human-centric. We never test against it. We test that the fields that are there are actually the fields that we have in the protocol. But we do not test that it works like that, because the expectation is it should be as easy to read as possible. It should be as easy to grasp as possible. We have a huge amount of features, particularly with our partner dating apps, like, I don't know, I think 500 of requests and messages. So what's important is if you want to look at any feature, you just look at it, and you have in 10 seconds, you have the understanding, okay, I do this request, it's similar to that request, etc. So this is the tech spec. And one other thing that I promised to talk about, which is kind of related, is how to actually, like, it's a mix of how it happens in our company, how it can happen in any company that develops huge products, maybe mid-sized, large-sized, is how can you start this team? Because a very important thing about that is, again, is you can't just hire a person, or you maybe can, I don't know, but we didn't manage to hire a person who can do this for us. The idea is you grow this person inside the team, and it kind of pops out of the existing structure. So the existing structure is typically you have a backend team and front-end team, or front-end teams, right, the mobile developers. And the backend team, probably there's a person there, or two people or something, who are more aware of API than other backend developers. And you just start growing this part. You just say, okay, man, let's make you review that other APIs other people design, and this person starts to review them. Maybe if he's interested in that, he starts like being half-time API designer, half-time developer, and then you basically have it there. And after that, you say, "Oh, okay, can you maybe write some documentation?" And if he's not angry at you at this point, then it's basically a win. So then you can grab this person and say, "Now, now you're responsible. And what you're doing after that is, well, once again, depending on his reaction. What happened in our case, I think, I wasn't actually there when it happened, but what happened in our case is at some point of time, a guy from one of the front-end teams, wanted to actually participate as well, and this is where it started. So the API designer team, in our case, consists of basically all backgrounds. Like we have a server guy, a JavaScript guy, an Android guy. So that's how it works. But what's important is, you can stop at any point here. That depends on what you need. And well, it's the usual disclaimer actually. It always depends on what you need, and that worked for us, right? And we went all the way through from top to bottom. But you just think about it. Think whether or not it makes sense to have a separate people who know top to bottom how all your integration works, because you can't make backend developers own the communication between backend and front end, because it becomes very one-sided. You end up with an API that's very similar to your database. That's not always a good thing. So think about whether you need this, and maybe try that, and maybe find that person who is more interested in APIs than other people. And then maybe you end up being this agile bureaucratic team that's so agile because it's so bureaucratic. So that's it basically. As I said, please try and have a separate team that manages the intra-team communications, particularly technical ones, and try to hire good software engineers there. It is not useful if it's just writers. It should be actual engineers who actually take decisions, not just write down the documentation. Then try to grow this team in-house, because it's very hard to hire these people. Well, do the important large stuff bureaucratically, but only the important large stuff, and do the quick stuff quickly. Ideally, I don't know how. Somehow it works for us, and that's it. Thank you.